Hello again. I think I'm just gonna be in the habit for a while, just coming in without an idea of what I'm gonna talk about until just a couple seconds ago. If I was gonna want to talk about the whole wall situation with the border in Mexico and whatnot, but I don't want to just stick to politics or current events on what I talk about because that's not the only thing that goes on in my head, even though when it's happening, you kind of want to have a good idea of what's going on and form an opinion. And so I was thinking priorities. A couple good things I'm not quite going to mention yet happened this past week, that I'm pretty excited about to to get the ball rolling on some things I've really been trying to work on myself, and I might actually have some help soon. And not even help. It's motivation because someone else wanting to do almost an identical thing. Multiple people actually, but one specifically. And my priorities have changed a lot over the last my whole life, and I think they do for everybody. When I was a teenager, you don't really think about priorities. You have video games. You want to get good at certain video games. You want to beat a video game. You go to school because you have to. You know, you listen to what you need to get through the things so you don't get any hassle outside of school. That's what it became for me. It wasn't a priority for me as I got through school. Once I got to maybe 5th grade, it stopped being a priority in my view. It was all the same stuff all over again, and I could get away with not paying attention, maybe make a few notes, do homework real quick in a study block, or I forget what they're called nowadays. But you learn to get away with what you don't need to do in order to be held accountable. I wasn't held accountable for a lot of things. So when I personally wasn't held accountable for things, I didn't worry about it. And I think that happens more and more and more as we get older, you know. And you have to realize you have to hold yourself accountable, because just because other people aren't going to point out your faults or what you're not doing right, or point out something, hey, you could do this better, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have to pay attention to it. Because if you don't pay attention to it when someone does try to point out your faults through criticism, and it might be friendly criticism, and say, hey, you should try this out, I see you not, they might even just say, hey, that's not even the right way to do it, but in their head they're saying, hey, I see that you're struggling, and this might help because it's helped myself, and in my experience I've learned that. And maybe even easily, because they were taught it at such a young age, they think it's normal. But to you, because it was never brought up, it seems like an attack on who you are, because they're acting like you should know it. But in all reality, we don't know what we haven't been taught regularly, especially if you've gone through a similar life, and as I have, like relatively low income, not privileged, as some people would say, where your parents were figuring out life just as much as they were helping you, trying to prepare for it. Some people have parents who made it to a point, and they can help their children prepare right off the bat. So if you want that type of life for those around you, you got to be the type of people that have the priorities set to where they're going to be prepared, and they're going to help their children prepare. And my wife and I tried to have children for a long time, around a year or two after we got married. And I was young, and she got pregnant relatively early, but she had a miscarriage, and it took us 3 years. And it's terrible, it wasn't fun, going through an abortion, seeing my wife like that. But my priorities weren't necessarily straight. I mean, my kids definitely are are part of the equation and what's straightened out my priorities. And I think that's I'm happy that I'm slowly getting to a place where my priorities are starting to become in line. But it takes a lot of internal thinking to figure out what your priorities are, because you can have priorities set on other people's priorities, like your friends around you, if they're getting this and that, or they're doing this and that, and that's like a social priority. That's kind of the same thing as like doing what you have to at school to try to get something, if you're kind of chasing after what they have, or because you're not really thinking about what's good for you. You're just doing what's good for everybody else in order to fit in. And then if everybody else thinks that's where you need to be, or where you need to devote your time and energy, you'll feel somewhat good about it because everybody else around you is doing similar, or maybe slightly better, but you're able to get certain things that are on par with it. And to me, that's never been a type of thing that I've looked at. I've been kind of internal person, and not necessarily an introvert, but I was like as introvert as an extrovert could be. I like my alone time. I like staying up at night, but I'm still sociable. I can meet new people and talk to them. I have no problem. But I enjoy my time sitting there thinking about things, and I notice it helps me a lot because you think about, I see these memes like on the internet with people like, oh, you go to bed at night and you rehash all your problems like it's a depression. I've done that a lot, but you can't just sit there and dwell on, oh my God, this went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong. You have to flip it. Like, you have to want to learn from those thoughts. Like, you have to think in your own head that because you went through this, you saw how it happens, and you can do something to fix it. And I think that's where priorities come into play, when you start to examine your own mistakes that you've made, not just everybody else's, but your own. Even if someone else was wrong in a situation and your mistake was merely a retaliation to the situation, did your retaliation make it better or worse, or easier to fix or to repair? So I've been thinking a lot about a lot of things, and these videos are a part of that. And I think you have to let go of certain things. A lot of people say ego, let go of your own ego. And that's true. But a lot of people think is their own ego as like a selfish aspect of their life, a selfish desire. But really, your ego is not that. Your ego is something that wants you to keep your thoughts in line with everybody else. You know what I mean? Your ego is something that doesn't want to be different than everybody else. Because if it was just your ego that's holding you back, if there was no one else around you, your ego would keep you alive, because your best interest would be in preserving yourself. Now, in a social environment such as our own, in our communities, our ego keeps us in line to survive within our daily social interactions. So if your daily social interactions make up a most important part of your own self, your ego is going to be based on that. So it gets to the point where you have to find, like, maybe, I've always said, like, a certain pride isn't bad, selfishness isn't bad, because if you're proud of who you are, your opinion, your thoughts, and your own self, you're going to try to defend it. But if you're truly proud, you're going to try to be as just with it. If you're a good person, you're going to try to think of all the ways that you may not be right. And so, like, with priorities, a lot of people, they think their priorities are just to pay their bills. Their priorities are just to show up on time to work, which that's a good priority. They're all good priorities. But, like, what's your priority for your life? And a lot of people say there's no meaning to life except what you get it, and that's one of those cliches that end up being deeper than they are once you get to a point when you start figuring out what your meaning of your life is. If that is just a way to say live a good life, then that's not really the correct meaning of the meaning of your life is what you make it. Because when you make the meaning of your life, it's everything. So if your meaning of your life right now is figuring out what to watch on Netflix till you go to bed, to go to work, to pay for Netflix, to go home, to eat some food, do something else until you go to bed, to wake up, you know what I mean? Like, that's not a priority. Having a good job is not a priority. Having a good job is a means to an end, you know. So what are you planning on doing? Just working till you die? Or are you trying to build something up for your kids? If you are, then going to work is great. You know, going to work is fun. You know, it's not, it's not fun. Don't get me wrong. But when you have a goal, like there's a guy on my Facebook, I used to work with him somewhere. His name's Billy. And he's gone through some stuff. But that dude's always working, man. Like, he's got a daughter who he ended up getting custody of. And I see his Facebook posts all the time. And sometimes he's sad about life. But, man, the most of the time he's all about, I'm working this overtime. I'm going to get this taken care of. I got this goal. I want to be, you know, monetarily successful. I want to be independent. He works auctions. You know, he works on, you know, his eBay stuff. He collects things and sells them. Like, the dude is just, you can tell he's got a priority. You know, you can tell he's wanting to do something for him and his daughter, and he's got goals to establish something so that when his daughter grows up and looks back at him, she's like, man, my dad worked his butt off to do something, and I lived pretty well. And from what I see, it seems like, you know, it's not too bad. We all go through things, and I see those too, but man, you can tell what he's trying for. You know, and other people, you know, you see a lot of their posts are about, you know, just random celebrities or different movies or different things like this. And I'm all for it. I'm a movie junkie. I like watching a lot of movies. I haven't in a while. Nothing's really piqued my interest. I'm into different things, you know. But to an extent, if that's all your mind is on, you haven't found your passion for life. You know, I found mine fairly early, but I didn't realize how I needed to view it, you know. My passion is music and creating things and learning about it and learning how to make music correctly. And it's taken me down a path of poetry and art and science and philosophy just in my passion for music. It's opened up all these things that I would have never thought about music and what it means to understand music. You know, I learned I didn't really learn it. I had, you know, I was wondering why this is going to sound totally out of place in this conversation, but bear with me. I was thinking about why we don't use the metric system. And I got to thinking, if you look at the imperial system, which is what we use, which is inches, feet, yards, etc., you have 12 inches in a foot, and there are 12 inches, or 12 notes in an octave. The divisions between, you know, the measurements are fractions, and most of the time they're quarter, eighths, sixteenths, 30-seconds. So it's just like music. The way we measure in the United States and a few other countries left is the same form of structure that we use to structure rhythm and notation in music. Just like our alphabet is also what is used for the notes on the musical scale. Now, it got me, you know, that alone is awesome because it makes you think about, oh, you know, the people who thought of this way of measuring wanted to keep it in line with the same way we write music. And what implications would that have? You know, and I got to thinking about our education system and how if we you keep people with an artistic mind because it makes numbers and math mesh with music and art, because even painting, the colors are fractions usually, depending on how you do it, of measurement for your paint, for the different colors and pigments. And yeah, you can get into, the metric system's all decimal points, and decimal points are representations of fractions. But it makes it so much more complicated for regular use. But when you mix it with music, it allows the mind to grasp two concepts in one, and that's a musical aspect and a rhythm, to more of a thinking, like a physical sense, I guess. It's like the right brain, left brain. So I mean, that's just one example of things you can learn when you're trying to get better at music, and the avenues that it can take you down. And that's one thing that kind of puts into perspective how unique America is, because you there are many things that have different symbology and reasoning behind them that we don't even know about. But if you take them away, I think you start to see what happens. So our priorities have to be right. I like the imperial system even more because of that. Because for me, it's a musical measurement, and if I teach my kids that, my children, that, they're instantly, just through learning math, gonna learn music. So it makes it that much easier when they want to go learn music, and that's awesome. Like, I honestly, I have no proof of this, but if it coincides all the way, like, you have to assume that the people who decided it and to put this system into place had this in mind. So keep that in mind when you're learning more about things that you're interested in. That your passions should draw you to information you don't already know. It shouldn't draw you to all the same people that you already know about, and all the same things, and so that ties into also passion for business, or anything else. So if you want to build something, you have to learn about other things that may not have anything to do with with what you think is involved. So you learn and you grow. Because the priority is not to be right about what you're doing before you mess up. It's your priorities need to be, I have something bigger that if I fail, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to keep trying because of this. Priority is something that is much bigger than a goal. A priority is the goal. So I'm hoping that as I keep doing this, I find better ways and better things to speak about. I might open it up to a Facebook Live here and there, and maybe get some comments, or even a stream on YouTube or something. Maybe have a discussion if people would like, almost like a podcast forum, but not really. More just a discussion, But I am gonna have these uploaded for people to listen to as podcasts on iTunes soon, as well as my other podcast, Agnostic Morality, and hoping to get some interaction from some folks if they'd like to. But if not, my thoughts are still going to be up here. And I hope you guys have an awesome day and an awesome week. And try to really think about things outside of the box when it comes to your priorities. I think it helps a lot. Thank you.